March 1943. 02:11 hours. North Atlantic, convoy route A check sector. The destroyer cuts through black water with no running lights. Wind scrapes along the deck, sharp and wet, carrying the smell of salt and oil. The convoy is somewhere behind them now, dark shapes lost in darkness, while the escort pushes ahead, searching empty sea. Inside the hull, far below the bridge, the sonar room is dim and crowded. Headphones clamp over a young officer's ears. He leans forward, elbows on his knees, eyes closed, not from fatigue, but concentration. Every vibration, every thump of the ship's own screws bleeds into the soundscape. The ocean never stops talking. Most of it is nonsense. Currents, thermal layers, whales, debris tumbling through water. The sonar operator hears all of it. And then something else. Not a ping, not a clean echo. Just a faint, irregular return that doesn't belong to the background noise. He adjusts the gain slightly, the sound shifts but doesn't disappear. He listens again. The contact is weak, uneven, almost polite, the kind of signal escorts are trained to ignore because chasing ghosts gets convoys killed. He marks the bearing anyway. Possible contact, he says, keeping his voice neutral. On the bridge, the response is immediate and dismissive. Range, the escort commander asks. Uncertain, the young officer replies, echoes inconsistent. A pause. Then, likely biologics, hold course. The young officer swallows. He removes one ear cup, then puts it back on, resetting his focus. He knows the difference between confidence and certainty, and this isn't certainty. The echo drifts. Not randomly. Deliberately. That's what bothers him. Marine noise doesn't pace a ship. He checks the clock, adjusts again, listens deeper. The sound tightens just slightly, as if something below is correcting for the destroyer's movement. He speaks again, carefully. Sir, request permission to recheck bearing. It's holding station relative to us. Up on the bridge, the commander exhales sharply. He's been awake too long. Every convoy run brings a dozen false alarms like this. Sonar operators fresh out of training hear submarines everywhere. Negative, he says, we don't have time for shadows. The destroyer keeps moving. In the sonar room, the young officer feels heat rise behind his eyes. Not anger, not fear. Responsibility. If he's wrong, nothing happens. If he's right, the echo sharpens again. Just for a second. Long enough. He straightens in his chair. Sir, he says firmer now, that contact is maneuvering. Silence on the line. The destroyer's engines rumble on. Somewhere above, officers exchange looks. The commander hesitates, not because he believes the contact, but because ignoring the wrong one is worse than chasing the wrong one. Very well, the commander finally says, mark and hold, one pass only. The young officer exhales, slow, controlled. The ship begins to turn. In the black Atlantic below, something adjusts its depth. And in the next few minutes, the ocean is going to decide who was listening and who was guessing. The destroyer's bow swings left. Not sharply, just enough to satisfy procedure. One pass, that's the compromise. A nod to caution without committing the escort away from the convoy for too long. Inside the sonar room, the young officer tracks the turn with his body, leaning instinctively as if that might steady the sound in his ears. The echo wavers, then tightens. His pulse spikes. Contact strengthening, he reports, bearing steady relative to turn. On the bridge, the commander frowns. That isn't how biologics behave. Whales don't correct for a destroyer's maneuver. Currents don't hold position. Still, doubt lingers. The Atlantic has embarrassed experienced men before. Stand by, the commander says. We'll run the pass. The destroyer steadies on its new heading. Sonar pings go out clean, measured. The water answers back. The return comes late. Too late. Range decreasing, the young officer says. His voice is calm now, clipped. Training has taken over. Target depth moderate, speed minimal. The word target hangs in the air longer than it should. On the bridge, the commander grips the rail. Minimal speed means a boat lying doggo, silent running, letting the escort pass overhead before slipping away. It's a textbook move. Helm, maintain course, he orders. Prepare a shallow pattern. He still hasn't committed to the idea that this is real. Not yet. The destroyer passes over the contact. For a moment, the sonar room goes quiet. The echo smears, stretched by the ship's own noise. This is the moment where false contacts usually die, where the ocean gives itself away. It doesn't. As the destroyer's stern clears the bearing, the echo snaps back cleaner than before. Contact regained, the young officer says, dead astern, same bearing. That's when the bridge changes. No raised voices, no panic, just a shift in posture. The commander straightens, the watch officers stop moving. He knows what that means. Mark, he says, all hands, this is not nothing. The destroyer tightens its turn, speed increases, the sea foams brighter along the hull. Below, the sonar echo begins to slide, slowly, deliberately, trying to open distance. Too late. Target turning away, the young officer reports, depth increasing. That's confirmation. Marine life doesn't evade. Stand by depth charges, the commander orders. The racks are armed, the ship's stern lifts slightly as speed holds, men brace without being told. The young officer pulls one ear cup aside, sweat cold on his neck. He knows what comes next. If he's wrong, they'll churn empty water and return to the conv, embarrassed. If he's right, drop. The first charge falls. A hollow splash, then seconds of waiting that stretch thin. The explosion punches the water hard enough to rattle teeth. The destroyer shudders. Spray rises in a white column behind them. Second pattern, the commander says immediately. The young officer listens, not for the blast, but for what comes after. The echo distorts, wobbles, tries to stabilize. It doesn't. Target damaged, he says, noise increasing, irregular. The bridge goes very quiet. They're no longer hunting a ghost. They're hurting something. And beneath the Atlantic, steel is bending where it was never meant to. The destroyer does not slow. It circles tightly now, engines steady, rudder biting hard as the ship holds position over the wounded contact. This is no longer a courtesy pass. This is containment. Inside the sonar room, the young officer leans closer to the console. The sound in his ears has changed completely. What was once faint and irregular is now chaotic. Metallic groans bleed through the water. A grinding noise, low, stressed, rises and falls as if something below is struggling to keep its shape. The echo no longer corrects smoothly. It stumbles. Target noise increasing, he reports. Internal sounds, possible hull damage. On the bridge, the commander does not ask questions this time. Pattern 2, he says, tighter. Depth charges roll from the racks in quick succession, spaced closer now. The sea erupts behind the destroyer, columns of white water punching upward, overlapping, collapsing into violent foam. Below the surface, the pressure wave hits first. Inside the submarine, lights flicker, tools fall, men are thrown against bulkheads as the hull flexes under forces it was never designed to absorb repeatedly. Valves scream. Somewhere deep inside, something ruptures. Back on the destroyer, the young officer feels it before he hears it. The echo breaks. Not fades, breaks. Contact losing coherence, he says, voice tight, noise uncontrolled. That's when the ocean changes color. Oil, someone shouts from the bridge wing. A dark slick spreads across the waves, thin at first, then thicker, unnatural against the cold Atlantic water. Debris follows, wood fragments, insulation, something metallic, briefly visible before sinking again. The destroyer passes through the slick, wake cutting a black scar through the surface. The commander stares down at it. This is not marine life. This is not imagination. This is confirmation. Cease dropping, he orders. Maintain sonar. Inside the sonar room, the young officer listens again. There is nothing. No echo correcting. No movement. No sound at all. Just the low hiss of the ocean returning to itself. Contact lost, he says quietly. No further returns. The destroyer slows at last, circling the oil-stained water. Men line the rails now, staring down at the evidence spreading beneath them. No cheering, no relief. Just silence. The commander removes his cap and wipes his brow. He doesn't look at the young officer yet. He doesn't need to. The doubt is gone. The ocean has spoken clearly enough. Minutes earlier, this was nothing. An irregular echo. A sound not worth chasing. Now it is oil on the waves and debris sinking into black water. The conv will never know how close it came. And the young sonar officer, still seated, headphones resting against his neck, understands something he will never forget. The Atlantic does not always announce danger loudly. Sometimes it whispers. And sometimes listening long enough makes all the difference. The destroyer remains on station. Not out of caution anymore, but protocol. Oil can drift, debris can mislead, command requires certainty before a kill is logged. Inside the sonar room, the young officer stays at his post, headphones back on, eyes open now. He sweeps slowly, methodically, left to right, shallow to deep. Nothing answers. The ocean has gone quiet in a way he's never heard before. Not empty, settled. On the bridge, the commander watches the slick widen, stretch, thin. It smells sharp and unmistakable. Diesel fuel, not whale oil, not imagination. He exhales through his nose. Mark position, he says. Log probable kill. No one celebrates. A U-boat kill is not like an air victory. There is no wreckage to photograph, no enemy to count, just absence. And absence here means success. A signal lamp blinks briefly toward the conv. A coded message goes out over radio silence, short, precise. Escort holding position, threat neutralized. The conv never slows. Below deck, the young officer finally removes his headset fully. His hands shake slightly now that there is nothing left to track. He hadn't noticed the tension building in his shoulders until it releases all at once. The sonar chief steps beside him, older, quieter. You trusted your ears, he says. The young officer nods. It didn't behave like noise. The chief allows himself a thin smile. That's how you tell. Above them, the destroyer begins to turn back toward its assigned screen position. The mission continues. There are always more miles, more shadows. But something fundamental has shifted. Not in the Atlantic. In the room. The commander descends from the bridge a few minutes later. He stops just inside the sonar compartment, looking at the young officer for a long moment. You were right, he says simply. No apology, no explanation. That's enough. Because in escort warfare, doubt can be deadly, but certainty, when earned, reshapes how decisions are made. And from this point on, faint echoes will not be dismissed as easily. The destroyer slides back into its place along the convoy's flank. To the men on the merchant ships, nothing looks different. The sea is still dark, the wind still cold, the Atlantic still endless. They will never know that a submarine lay beneath them minutes earlier, waiting for the moment to strike. But inside the Escort, something has shifted permanently. On the bridge, the commander stands a little closer to the sonar reports than before. He doesn't say it out loud, but the lesson is clear. Dismissal is a decision too. And tonight, dismissal almost cost lives. In the sonar room, the young officer is no longer just the new man. His reports are listened to without the automatic skepticism that comes with inexperience. When he says a contact feels wrong, that word "feels" is no longer treated as weakness. It is treated as data. Across the Atlantic, similar moments are happening on other ships, on other nights. Faint echoes chased longer, escorts staying on station instead of breaking off. Depth charges dropped not because a contact is perfect, but because it refuses to behave like noise. These aren't dramatic victories. They are habits forming. And habits, in warfare, change outcomes faster than orders ever can. German U-boat commanders begin to notice the difference almost immediately. Attacks that once ended cleanly now draw escorts that won't leave. Hunts last longer. Escape takes more battery, more air, more luck. The ocean is starting to punish hesitation. That single slick of oil in the North Atlantic does not end the U-boat threat. Convoys will still be hit, ships will still sink, men will still die. But something crucial has been taken away. The benefit of doubt. From now on, the Atlantic will be treated as hostile even when it seems quiet. Silence will no longer mean safety, and faint echoes will no longer be ignored simply because they are inconvenient. For the young sonar officer, the moment passes without ceremony. His watch ends, another begins, the sea rolls on. But he carries the knowledge with him that sometimes the most important battles are decided not by what you can see, but by whether someone is willing to say, "That's not nothing," and refuse to let it go. By the end of 1943, the Atlantic has changed its tone. Not its appearance, but its rules. U-boats no longer slip away as easily. Escorts no longer apologize for staying too long on a contact. Aircraft return again and again, forcing submarines deeper, longer, harder. The ocean has become crowded with attention. What defeated the U-boats was not a single invention or a single brilliant officer or a single night of success. It was accumulation of pressure, of patience, of listening. That young sonar officer will never know which lives he saved. There will be no record of the convoy that never burned. No headline for the torpedoes that were never fired. But the oil on the waves told the truth. That faint echoes matter. That doubt can be fatal. And that the Atlantic does not forgive those who stop listening. In 1943, German submarines still hunted. But the ocean had begun to answer back. And once it did, it never went quiet again. The pressure arrives before the sound. Deep below the Atlantic, the U-boat shudders as if struck by a giant hand. Lights flicker, tools rattle loose. Men are thrown sideways in the narrow passageways, boots scraping metal as the hull flexes and groans. Then the sound hits. A deep, concussive roar that seems to come from everywhere at once. The commander grips the edge of the chart table as the boat lurches downward. Gauges jump. A needle trembles near a red line no one wants to cross. "Damage report," he shouts. Water is already seeping in, thin streams at first, forced through seals that were never meant to bend this way. A valve screams somewhere aft. Another explosion rolls through the hull, closer this time, and the lights go out completely. Emergency lamps flicker on, bathing the compartment in dim red. The sonar operator, German this time, rips his headphones off. "They're still on us," he says, voice tight, multiple screws holding position. That sentence lands harder than the depth charges. Holding position means the escorts haven't lost them. It means the hunt hasn't broken. It means there will be no easy escape when the explosions stop. The commander orders silent running, though he knows it may already be too late. Electric motors whine softly as speed drops. Men freeze where they are, careful not to move, not to breathe too loudly. Another blast. A seam opens in a compartment forward. Water pours in faster now, pooling at boots, sloshing with the boat's slow roll. Damage control teams scramble, bracing bulkheads, tightening clamps with shaking hands. The commander does the math in his head. Battery levels falling. Air degrading. Depth holding for now. Above them, the escorts wait. That is the most terrifying part. Not frantic pursuit. Not random depth charges. Patience. Minutes pass, then another pattern of explosions, closer again. The hull screams, a high-pitched metallic cry that makes seasoned sailors wince. A pressure gauge spikes, then settles just below the danger zone. The commander closes his eyes for half a second. This is no longer about winning. It's about surviving long enough to surface, or not. Another report comes in. Fuel tank compromised, Herr Kapitän. Oil. The word hangs in the air like a death sentence. Oil means a trail. Oil means confirmation. Oil means the ocean above them is already telling their story. The commander knows what the escorts will see before they hear it. A spreading slick, dark against dark water, impossible to mistake. Above, the destroyer is circling. Below, the U-boat is running out of options. The commander orders a depth change down, just a little. Hopping pressure will buy silence. The hull answers with a long, strained groan. It's too much. Another explosion lands, not close enough to tear the boat apart, but close enough to finish what the others started. A bulkhead buckles, water surges, men shout, then fall silent as they realize the truth all at once. This is containment. Not chance. Not luck. Design. The commander looks at the men around him, faces lit red, eyes wide, trained and disciplined to the end. He gives the final order quietly. Stop engines. The boat settles, heavy and wounded, drifting into stillness. Above, the escorts listen. Below, the ocean presses in. And somewhere between those two silences, German control of the Atlantic slips away, one crushed hull at a time. The destroyer breaks contact only after certainty settles in. Oil continues to rise. Debris drifts in widening arcs. The sonar room remains quiet, no echo returning, no movement correcting, no sound at all beneath the ship. The ocean has closed over whatever remains below. On the bridge, the commander finally allows himself to step back. Log confirmed destruction, he says. His voice is steady, but different now, less dismissive than it was hours earlier. All stations, resume escort screen. The destroyer turns away, rejoining the conv, as if nothing remarkable has happened. To the merchant ships, it is just another cold night at sea. Engines drone, watches change, men drink coffee and stare into darkness. But inside the escort's logbook, something important is written. Not just coordinates. Not just time and conditions. An observation. Initial contact weak and irregular, persisted despite classification as marine noise. Sustained pursuit resulted in confirmed kill. That sentence matters. Hours later, in a cramped wardroom lit by a single shaded lamp, the commander dictates his after-action report. He chooses his words carefully, not to defend himself, but to capture the lesson before it fades. We treated faint contacts as real until proven otherwise, he says. Maintained pressure instead of disengaging, denied the submarine time to recover. No heroics. No exaggeration. Just process. The young sonar officer sits nearby, silent, listening. His name appears once in the report, not praised, not highlighted, simply noted as the source of initial persistence. That is enough. When the report reaches higher command days later, it is read alongside dozens of others, most unremarkable, some alarming. This one stands out not because of drama, but because of clarity. Weak contacts. Persistent pressure. Confirmed result. The language echoes phrases already circulating quietly through escort doctrine. Stay on contact, trust patterns over certainty, let time do the work. What happened that night is not treated as an exception. It is treated as confirmation. Across the Atlantic, similar reports begin to align. Different ships, different crews, same outcome, faint echoes chased longer than usual, escorts refusing to disengage, oil on the surface where nothing was supposed to be. Command does not issue a dramatic order. They don't need to. Escort captains read the reports. Sonar officers share stories. Habits change organically, faster than any memo could enforce. Weak contacts stop being dismissed automatically. One pass checks become two. Two become sustained holds. The ocean does not change. The way men listen to it does. And that shift, quiet, procedural, uncelebrated, does more damage to the U-boat fleet than any single weapon ever could. Because from now on, the Atlantic will not give submarines the benefit of doubt. And doubt, once removed, never comes back. What happened that night does not stay isolated. It couldn't, even if German command wanted it to. Across the Atlantic, U-boat patrol reports begin to echo the same complaints, written in different hands, but saying the same thing. Escorts are staying too long. Aircraft are arriving too quickly. Contacts that should fade are being held until something breaks. The pattern is unmistakable. Submarines are no longer escaping between engagements. A U-boat commander surfaces hundreds of miles away weeks later and writes bluntly in his patrol log, "The enemy no longer abandons the search." It isn't phrased as an accusation, it's an observation, one that carries weight. German command attempts to respond. They adjust patrol routes, spread boats wider, order commanders to disengage earlier, silence radios longer, dive deeper, stay patient. But patience no longer works the way it once did. Every evasion now costs more than it saves. Longer dives drain batteries. Deeper depths stress hulls already weakened by near misses. Escorts rotate while submarines cannot. Aircraft come back again and again, resetting the clock before recovery can begin. The Atlantic becomes a war of endurance. And endurance favors the surface. Above the water, Allied escorts don't feel like they're winning a grand battle. They feel like they're doing their jobs more thoroughly than before. Stay on station, share contacts, deny escape, let time finish what explosives start. The results compound quietly. Boats that once attacked 3 or 4 times per patrol now struggle to attack once. Crews spend more time lying still than moving forward. Commanders return to port exhausted, with fewer results to justify the risk. Morale erodes without ceremony. Not through fear, but futility. The ocean feels crowded now, watched, measured. Even when no escort is visible, the possibility of one shapes every decision. The hunters begin behaving like the hunted. German command understands the danger, but there is no simple fix. You cannot order the ocean to open again. You cannot instruct escorts to grow careless. You cannot undo a system that has learned how to persist. The advantage has inverted. Submarines were built to exploit gaps, moments when no one is listening. Once those gaps close, the design itself becomes a liability. By late 1943, the Atlantic no longer rewards boldness beneath the waves. It punishes presence. And that is the final transformation. Not a new weapon, not a decisive battle, but a pattern that cannot be reversed once enough people believe in it. Because when everyone listens longer, someone always breaks. By the end of 1943, no announcement is made. No communique declares victory over the U-boats. No map is redrawn to show ownership changing hands. On paper, the Atlantic looks the same as it always has, vast, cold, indifferent. But to the men who fight on and beneath it, the difference is undeniable. German submarines still sail. Convoys still sail. The war continues. What has vanished is certainty. U-boat commanders no longer assume the ocean will hide them. Silence no longer feels protective. Depth no longer feels like safety. Every faint sound carries the risk of being held, followed, and pressed until something gives. The Atlantic has stopped forgiving mistakes. Above the surface, Allied escorts operate with a confidence that doesn't look like aggression. It looks like patience. They do not rush. They do not chase wildly. They stay. They listen. They wait longer than submarines can endure. This is not dominance through force. It is dominance through denial. Denial of time. Denial of recovery. Denial of doubt. That young sonar officer will never be named in a headline. His decision will not appear in history books. He will simply remember the night he refused to accept nothing as an answer, and how the ocean proved him right. The slick of oil that spread across the waves that night did more than mark a kill. It marked a shift. From that moment on, faint echoes mattered. Weak signals were chased. And the Atlantic became a place where listening longer could be lethal. German U-boats once dictated when convoys died. In 1943, the sea learned how to answer back. And once it did, it never returned to silence.